We are not going to share two sides of the aisle today. If everyone would move this way, that would be marvelous. Thank you. We do this differently than they do it in the Senate. I heard a lot of unification talk this morning. We're going to go in that direction. Well, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see all of you on this winter day in Stevens Point. I think spring will come eventually. Welcome to this edition of The Inside Story, and it's my pleasure this morning to introduce you to Erin Gregoria. Erin and her husband David and their two daughters moved here not quite a year ago now, in July, and we're so delighted that they found Holy Spirit Parish and made it their parish home. And I'm especially delighted that Erin is going to speak with us this morning about how God has moved her across her life to reach out to others, to people that many of us never think about, or lives that we never imagine, through her work with Catholic Charities. As I think about Erin, whom I've gotten to know through confirmation, she and I are table partners with a group of our young people. I think of that phrase from Shakespeare, she is small, but she is fierce. And she is such a soft-spoken woman, and yet inside of her is a fire that burns with the Spirit of God to do justice in this world and love mercy and walk humbly with Him. And so I will just stop talking and turn it over to Erin so that we can hear all about that.
Well, I first want to say thank you to Father and to Julie for giving me this opportunity. I must say, this is the first time I've actually given a faith testimony. So I really appreciate this. This is part of our faith and being challenged, and I really appreciate that. So as I've been introduced, my husband David and I have two daughters, Alice and Lucy, and we did move this past July to Stevens Point from the Twin Cities. Shortly after, we did become parishioners of this great parish. Stevens Point has been a home to my family for many generations. I had the opportunity of purchasing my family home, making me the 5th generation to own the house. I received many sacraments at St. Stephen's Parish, and I am an alumni of Pacelli High School. My bachelor's degree is in theology, youth ministry, from St. Mary's University of Winona, Minnesota. And I am currently attending St. Mary's University, pursuing my master's degree in clinical social work. My faith journey will be discussed in giving a little background of how my faith formation in my early years occurred, why I am still Catholic, and what I love about my faith, and what motivates me to keep engaged in social justice work and my employment at Catholic Charities. I share part of that testimony in my introduction because I believe that my values and principles have been influenced by my family's traditions. I believe my faith and my Catholic identity is a culmination of influences, life experiences, education, and moments of life transition. I was blessed to grow up in a family with a lot of laughter, love, encouragement, and sacrifice. I have many memories attending Mass, being a part of the children's choir. My mom was my CCD teacher, serving at Mass, and bearing witness to my parents living out their faith. My grandmother, Elvina May, was one of my heroes. Her devotion to her faith, her pride in her family heritage, and her gentle disposition was exemplary. I loved going to Mass with her. I found her faith a source of strength and comfort. I have mentioned that I am an alumni of Pacelli High School. One of my favorite teachers was Sister Jane Epping. She was a part of the School Sisters of Notre Dame. Sister Jane was my geometry teacher, and if I had the opportunity of giving her the title of saint, she'd earned it because I was terrible in math, and she had a tremendous amount of patience for me. Sister Jane would provide extra help by inviting me to the convent on afternoons to give me that extra help. I was inspired by her dedication to her vocation as a teacher and as a religious lady. I took her name as my confirmation name. She represented unwavering faith, bravery, strength through her battle with breast cancer. I was fortunate to have had Sister Jane not only as my math teacher, but a mentor in living an example of the dedicated follower of Christ that she was. She was beloved and has left a legacy that continues to inspire the students at Pacelli High School. Summer of my junior year, I attended a Together Encounter Christ retreat. This was held at the library at Pacelli High School. This retreat was a turning point in my life. Before attending this retreat, I had dreams and plans of becoming a world-renowned chef. The energy and celebration of faith I experienced during this retreat gave me pause. I remember walking to typing class. In the hallway, I heard Christ's voice telling me that I needed to go into ministry. I did not understand what that meant, and that felt very vague at that moment. However, that changed the course of my life. The influences of my religious teacher, Mrs. Liss, mission trips to St. Paul, and other experiences during my high school years gave me the exposure that I needed to pay attention to that seed that had been planted during the retreat. During my high school years, I discerned my vocation and started considering religious life. My parents were very supportive. I was accepted at St. Mary's University in Winona, Minnesota, to study theology. I continued to expose myself to opportunities that would enrich my faith. One of my college roommates and I decided to go to O'Fallon, Missouri one summer. We volunteered at the Mother House of Formation for the Sisters of Most Precious Blood. Our assignment included attending and providing fun activities to the retired sisters in the nursing home. During this time, I had learned about the order's foreign missions. Sisters of the Most Precious Blood is a teaching order, and they have sisters living in Bolivia and Peru. After I graduated from St. Mary's University, I made a year-long commitment to volunteer at San Pedro's Parish in Sica Sica, Bolivia, which is located in the Altiplano. I was there living in community with Sister Julie Wolf, a member of the Sisters of Most Precious Blood, or laity. My days were spent assisting in the parish library, tutoring students, sacramental preparation, and assisting with parish activities. We also had a parish soup kitchen for the children in the village. The rich traditions and devotion to the spirituality of these community members were intoxicating. I lived in community in a setting that I'd only seen prior in the National Geographic magazines. I was in Bolivia, and that is when I understood the meaning of church. Catholicism was a religious recognized practice, but it wasn't part of the spirituality of the people. So it wasn't common for Catholic communities to have church structures. The priest that was assigned to the parish that I was volunteering had 60 other parishes to attend to. So one Sunday, I accompanied him to a small village where we were going to celebrate Mass. This area that we were going to celebrate Mass had 2 piles of rock and a wooden board across it, and that was to serve as the altar. We were in the middle of a field with torn down structure that served as a windbreaker to keep the candles lit. To this faith community, they cared about receiving the sacrament, and it was also a moment of recognition of how I took for granted and recognized my privilege. When I returned from my year in Bolivia, I was applying to many youth ministry positions, which I was hoping I never got, because I wanted to figure out how to get back to South America. In the meantime, I volunteered at Watoma at the St. Joseph Catholic Church. I assisted the Hispanic ministry coordinator, providing sacramental preparation to families who were living in the seasonal worker camps. This experience only increased my desire to return to South America. Cardinal Raymond Burke, at the time when he was our diocesan bishop, was celebrating confirmation at St. Bronislava's Parish. I happened to be attending the sacramental celebration. During the sign of peace, Cardinal Burke came to me and asked me if he could speak with me. He wanted to talk to me about the diocesan orphanage, Casa Hogar Juan Pablo II, in Lorraine, Peru, and wanted to know if I was interested in volunteering there. I disclosed to Cardinal Burke that I had financial responsibilities as my student loans were coming due. He asked me how much they were. When I shared the monthly amount, he stated that the diocese would cover that monthly student loan payment during my time in Peru. I couldn't believe this opportunity and the generosity of the diocese. So I spent a little over a year at Casa Hogar Juan Pablo II. I had the privilege and honor of working alongside Father Joe Walieski. The history of this orphanage and its example of one's devotion to their faith and living it out unapologetically is something you cannot make up. The children and the staff taught me so much about perseverance and resiliency. What stood out to me was the children's hope and belief that their lives would be better. The understanding of having the opportunity that they could finally attend school so that in turn they could go back and take care of their families and create the stability that they were missing. But the greatest catechists in my life were my parents, and they gave me value and principle. My life was blessed with a foundation that gave me confidence to believe in my potential. The foundation that I'm speaking of is the faith in God and their love for each other. I would not be here today speaking to all of you if I had not grown up in the home and I did not have the parents who were devoted to each other and making sure that I had a solid faith formation and quality education. So I'm continuing to be a Catholic. As simply put, as a Catholic, I have the opportunity to live my best life. I was asked in a job interview way back when I was applying to be a youth minister why I wanted to be one. And my answer was, the church feels like a second home to me. I find the rituals and traditions very comforting. My spiritual needs are best met. When I feel anxiety, I find the rosary calming. I do not like combative climates that we are living in, and I believe in unity, and I appreciate being a part of a community that participates in ecumenical outreach, praying for all persons, regardless of faith. I also take advantage of the grace from the sacraments to take time to evaluate my conscience and reflect on ways that I can overcome moments when I let my ego, pride get in the way of being a better daughter to Christ, wife, mother, daughter, sister, friend, and neighbor. I was raised in a home in which my parents often stated that we have a responsibility to make our corner of the world a little better. My parents modeled for each of us how to live out those corporal and spiritual works of mercy. I believe that dignity is everyone's birthright. I've had the honor of being part of individuals making changes in their lives as they're overcoming poverty, abuse, victimization due to crime, addiction, struggling with challenges due to cognitive disabilities, and grief. Whatever way I have been a part of a solution or a plan that creates change, I personally receive so much more than I ever gave. The Catholic institution and this diocese has given me quality education, a passport, and employment opportunities that address social injustices in our communities and on the global scale. As an employee of Catholic Charities, I've worked with the Diocese of La Crosse at various times throughout my professional career. Catholic Charities Diocese of La Crosse gave me my first job when I got home from Peru. My resume continued to build with even more opportunities. I also had the opportunity to work for Catholic Charities, the Diocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis. I was a case manager for the Trafficking Victim Services. Our particular program was funded through the Department of Justice, Office of Victims of Crime. Catholic Charities has been a leading organization in addressing poverty, homelessness, and social justice. Trafficking Victim Services program started because law enforcement had responded to a call that uncovered labor trafficking involving 5 individuals and a restaurant owner. Due to the training of human trafficking, the officers were able to respond accordingly and appropriately. Catholic Charities has comprehensive services that were able to provide immediate safety needs and support for these individuals. Catholic Charities was actually approached to apply in collaboration with law enforcement and the state attorney general to apply for this grant. As my ability to be a case manager, we cannot deny that historically, Catholic Charities has been on the front lines addressing the most egregious actions against humanity. I remember one case in particular that I was addressing labor trafficking. These individuals, they were crossing our southern border. They were kidnapped, exploited for labor purposes. These individuals were able to escape their traffickers and sought help from law enforcement. Their case transferred to our office in Twin Cities because they had family members that could provide a more structured support system that they needed. It was my responsibility to assess their safety, to address their basic needs, to respond to any mental health concerns, and to connect them with legal services. I had the opportunity to be a part of their legal process. We were able to petition for one of the individual's children and wife. What typically happens in human trafficking is that when traffickers use manipulation of family, and so their threats were received, this wife and these children were receiving threats from their traffickers in their home country. I will never forget the day that the children arrived to the airport. Months later, their mother, my client's wife, were all reunited together. They are currently thriving today, and they're working and they're attending school. Part of my role as a case manager in the program also included extensive community outreach and educational opportunities. We were active participants in the Minnesota Statewide Human Trafficking Task Force. And to carry out that mission, we had subcommittees tackling this issue in various forms. I led the subcommittee addressing labor trafficking. Our team created an identification tool for law enforcement. This tool was given law enforcement so they had the ability to assess a potential situation. It was written in a way that could build that rapport so that if an alleged victim was identified, they were able then to make appropriate referrals to address the immediate health and safety needs. I have to say that the dynamics of human trafficking are very complicated and complex. As professionals, we can assess and detect those red flag indicators. However, an individual who is trapped in this doesn't always see their situation the same way. So the team came back together and we completed a self-assessment tool so that individuals would have the opportunity to start identifying what they were experiencing. This employment led to other opportunities. And I had the opportunity of working with women and children fleeing domestic violence in our nation's first domestic shelter in Minnesota, and it's called Women's Advocates. The courage and bravery of these individuals as they fled abuse and violence and oppression were simply inspiring. I share that we came back to the Stevens Point in this last July. Catholic Charities has welcomed me back, and I have employment that I feel proud and I feel fulfilled at. As a financial wellness advocate, I work with individuals in addressing housing and financial stability. Part of the conversation includes what is important to the client, what are choices that they want to make for their life. I advocate on their behalf with landlords and utility companies. I enjoy the collaboration among my colleagues and their respected programs. Our Beyond Shelter program addresses chronic homelessness. I've had the opportunity to work with individuals who are receiving services at those shelters. And we work on increasing credit score and establishing a savings account. One individual stated to me that he is not very disciplined when it comes to saving. So we discussed what is most important in his life. And when he stated his child, we talked about that being his motivation. And so currently he has opened a savings account. And when his child turns 18, that is what he is going to do, is turn over the money to her. What continues to keep me engaged in social justice is my employment and my past volunteer experiences. I've learned so much from those that I've worked with, collaborated with, and advocated for the dignity and well-being of all. Catholic Charities' core values align with my core values. The seed that was planted so many years ago has created mission-driven opportunities that give me energy, purpose, and fulfillment. I have made it my lifelong journey to continue to find ways to live with purpose and value that reflects my faith. In a short time I've been at this parish, I have been blessed with the opportunities to use my skills and strengths. How I view the human experience has been welcomed at this parish. I conclude my testimony with quoting Edith Stein. During my undergraduate studies, I took a women's philosophy course. Edith Stein was a philosopher that we studied, and in my opinion, she's one of the greats. She is quoted as saying the following: "Each woman who lives in the light of eternity can fulfill her vocation, no matter if it is in marriage, in a religious order, or a worldly profession." Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. That's very inspiring. Are there any questions for Erin?
Just out of curiosity, who funds Catholic Charities? How is it funded?
Sure. So the diocese oversees much of the operations with Catholic Charities. That's part of the entity. There are also other donors, and I want to be fair, there's a comprehensive list of private donors and public donors, so I know that there might be a way of accessing a comprehensive list. I know we do get United Way funding, and then we also have other, the federal government has given Catholic Charities emergency food and shelter fund programs. Counties have their programs also to address, so when there's current trends in poverty, so for example, COVID relief funds, Catholic Charities also has access to those funds to help maintain, the idea is to maintain people in home and to address those grave vulnerabilities that put at risk their housing or their any of those basic needs.
Anything you can say about things developing in Stevens Point?
Sure. So Father is a real champion in really trying to make sure that gaps in services and needs are met. And so Father has reached out to my program directors to talk about what that would look like to have an office in Stevens Point. So there are current discussions around that. How can Catholic Charities support and be part of that puzzle so that gaps in needs and services are being met? We did have a meeting, and we are going to have continued meetings in the upcoming months, I believe.
Where do you work out of right now?
Sure. So Catholic Charities, they have 3 offices. And just so you know, Catholic Charities covers the 19 counties. So I work in Wausau, but I also provide in-kind and financial assistance to residents in Portage County, Wood County, Adams County, Clark County, and of course Marathon County. So we kind of take we have an opportunity to really address all needs in those 19 counties. I've had people that have called me and I've worked with in La Crosse County, for example. So we have that span. Because of COVID protocol, we really are limited in our face-to-face interaction. However, technology makes really a lot of things possible. So regardless of where my office is, I do assist multiple families in multiple counties across the 19 county dioceses.
Other questions?
Thank you, Erin, for your presentation. Let me just ask, and maybe this is neither the time nor the place, but have you, with your wonderful background, ever had any crisis of faith personally that you would care to comment on? And you may not want to, but if you do and if it's appropriate to, I'd be interested in you unpacking that.
Yeah, I think that faith can be conflicting. April 7th, I didn't agree with God making my dad an angel, so I'll be first to say, didn't get that input to, so I think when you have experience of a sudden grief loss, you get kind of shaken. I think there are times in life where, the saying is, if you want to make God laugh, tell God your plans, and so I think that I've had a few of those. But what makes me, because sometimes that doesn't feel good to admit or even to acknowledge. So, Sister Teresa of Calcutta often had, was transparent about having, just like, why God, why, and so I have had those, definitely I've had those experiences. I think also if I talk about just just kind of when you're exposed to different things and you see them playing out in real life. It's no longer in a movie or it's no longer in a textbook. You're seeing children, for example, and I speak about the Caso Hogar Juan Pablo II, something that we're all familiar with. I remember this family, and, Caso Hogar really, there were 9 children. 4 of them survived tuberculosis. The youngest one was 5. And her family, the poverty was so severe, and they had literally their home was dug out whole in the side of a hill. And so when they would come out and they would look at the lights, the city lights, because it was on top of the city, Lima, they would look out and this little 5-year-old would say, it's like Christmas every day when I come home because of all these beautiful lights. Like, she found joy. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. How is this even possible? And then I remember even coming back from Bolivia, and I had a real hard time adjusting to Target. Like, what do we need all of these things for? But it's also too, you get caught in that and you lose the value of appreciation. You lose the value of acknowledging, okay, this is what I have. So what can I do about that? What can I do with the things that I have? How can I share? How can I be a good steward with this? How can I be a part of things that deal with inequity, inequality? What can I do about that? Because it's clear I'm very privileged. I grew up in a very great, stable home. I went to amazing schools. I've had the privilege of so many things by choice. I lived in poverty by choice. And so with that comes that self-reflection to make sure that we're living with integrity. And so that's kind of maybe the way I circle back to how I combat those feelings.
Other questions? I have one myself. So, when I think of human trafficking, I am loosely aware that it doesn't just occur in big cities. And of course, we're in a college community. And are there things that we can be aware of as a parish in regard to the people around us and how we might recognize something that isn't right?
So you talk a lot about, there's a lot of this is in plain sight. You can't unsee it once you see it. So there is what's called the Polaris Project, and it's a nationwide human trafficking hotline, and it's very good information. And the reason that I say that, I kind of defer to that a little bit, is because it is such a sophisticated situation and issue. So things that I learned about, they were 2 steps ahead, you know, like you're just constantly chasing the time. One of the things though is that because of the complexity of human trafficking, for me, labor trafficking was what I was drawn to, and a lot of it was because I saw the exploitation overseas. And so that just really is something that I hone into. Others, you know, there's just multiple ways that people, you know, it's complex. It deals with different ages, different genders, different, you know, immigration status or citizenship. So there's so much to it. So I would recommend looking at the Polaris Project. They have real-time phone calls. They are one of the things when I talk about our tool that we put on, because it's one thing if you have law enforcement that can, you know, okay, I have somebody. They fit all of these things that you have said. You know, it addresses the statutes, it addresses what is defined as a human trafficking crime. Now what? Where do I go with this person? What do I do? So we put the Polaris Project hotline on because it's 24/7. And it's operated 24/7. And the reason I bring that up is because they triage between organizations in Wisconsin to Illinois to Minnesota. And the reason is because sometimes those safety concerns, we need to get somebody out of the state. It is not a victimless crime. So for example, without disclosing anything, I was working on a particular case, and my sister in Stevens Point was indirectly providing services for somebody that was involved in this case. So it happens over state lines. It happens, you know, kind of in this circuit between the highways and how it happens. One of the things I will say in our work on the Minnesota Human Trafficking Task Force and the Labor Subcommittee, we actually look to Wisconsin because they have, you have those sales crews, and you might hear of some of those publisher clearinghouses sweepstakes. You know, the one with the weird person that comes out with her hair all in a thing and, you know, balloons, and you've won a lifetime of $5,000 every week or whatever. So, so the publisher clearinghouse has these sales crews. And so Wisconsin had adopted a door-to-door registry, which was not adopted in Minnesota. So we looked to Wisconsin, and the reason is that came out of the Melinda law, I believe. In 1999, there was a van that had collided, and it had kids in there, 14 children. I believe 7 of them were killed in that accident. 7 of them have lifetime injuries. And what happened was that exposed the atrocities of these sales crews. These sales crews prey on vulnerabilities. So what they'll do is they'll say, hey, I've got this option or this opportunity for you to travel coast to coast. Training is included. We'll make sure your meals are provided. All you have to do is sell whatever these things are, be it magazines or be it whatever is the product. And the problem is that the children that are preyed upon are children who are homeless, children who come from families that do not have formal and informal support systems. So there's the level of vulnerability that becomes manipulated. And what happens is that they get trapped into the situation where they have to meet a quota, that they are, you know, they endure violence and abuse. When they don't meet this quota, they're taken, and the idea is to take somebody out of their familiar surroundings because that only increases their dependence, which allows greater vulnerability. It's a vicious cycle. So, so Wisconsin had adopted the Melinda law because it was a father who was able to get this law passed in the name of his daughter, who had lost her life in this horrible accident, which gave a template to how to deal with, you know, door-to-door sales crews, which is part of our human trafficking. So I think that, you know, the Women's Community Center in Wausau is doing phenomenal work in this realm. I am not familiar with any of the other organizations that might be addressing this issue, but I do think that it is something that once you see it, you just can't unsee it.
Is labor trafficking part of human trafficking, or what's the difference?
I'm sorry, what?
Is labor trafficking part of human trafficking, or is there different levels, or?
No, that's a really good question. So we have sex trafficking, we have youth sex trafficking, we have youth labor trafficking, and we have adult labor trafficking. So what can happen is sometimes you will see domestic servitude. There was a case, and I don't know the year of this, but it was this person had been brought from another country as a domestic servant, and it came out in actually a court hearing in a divorce. And so 19 years this person had been held captive in this home. And it was in Madison. And the concern was, or the issue was with that, was that the victim, and I apologize for using victim. Victim is not an empowering word, but because of the legal system, that is just the category that people are put into, unfortunately. But the victim had testified that they did not see themselves that way because the living conditions that they had in this home was better than what they left. So you have kind of that struggle, and that's why we went back to finding how can we create something where if law enforcement or somebody can see all these warning signs, well, that's fine, that's only 50% of the equation. What happens with the other side? Can they identify their own experience? So we do have that. So when you're talking about children, Minnesota, and I apologize, I'm not familiar with Wisconsin law, but in Minnesota, they were one of 5 that had adopted the safe harbor law. And what that did was that decriminalized youth. At a time when we have laws of consent, we were seeing children 10 years old in shackles being tried in adult courts for prostitution. So those laws don't make sense, right? So what they have is safe harbor laws. We had 5 at the time, and I apologize, I believe there's probably many more. So again, I'm being transparent about, I think, some outdated information that I have. But Minnesota then, once they adopted the safe harbor law, again, that's great, but what happens to these children? So they adopted the no wrong door, and that gave legislation, gave money so that organizations could have safe beds for individuals, for children once they were identified, that they had a place to go, and then they would get those immediate safety needs, and then it would branch from there in getting children the healing that they needed and hopefully reunited with family. I will say that, paying attention to some of this, now at the time, the team in Minnesota Statewide Human Trafficking Task Force, this is one of their committees, they were advocating for the legislation for $13 million, and they were given $3 million. So again, there is, there's a lot of work to make sure that we have the funding that can address some of these issues so that real change, real healing can occur. Because this is something that somebody will live with the rest of their lives. They just don't. It's not something, it takes a lifetime. And between post-traumatic stress disorder to some of these other disorders that have to be maintained in a person's lifespan, is overwhelming.
Aaron, I appreciate being here and listening to your faith background, your profession, your services. We need you, and this is what I'd like to talk about here in Portage County with credit counseling. I've had the experience as a credit counselor with the UW Extension for many years, and we did need help at that time, and I think they needed a lot more today. During COVID, it was shut down, as you probably may know. We didn't have professional counselors. We didn't have certified counselors, and many times we would send people to Wausau. Certainly when we couldn't help a person or family, and it was a bankruptcy only, we would send them to Wausau. The bankruptcy court here in Portage County did not accept our counseling because we were not certified, so we would send them to Wausau. So I think we're in a situation today, again, where it would be great to have someone that could come to Portage County. I'm not sure how that's going to work in your profession, but with one other opportunity in this county with the UW Extension, It's good to hear you're in the community, and thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn Peterson, is it true that the Council of Catholic Women has taken trafficking as a national issue? Anything you can say or connect with Erin about that?
I do not know particulars. I just know that the National Council of Catholic Women is, that's one of their issues. I do want to say that the Holy Spirit PCCW is currently looking. We did have a person who was in charge of a legislation committee, and she passed away, and we don't have anyone currently. So if you are interested, we would love to have you.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you for all you do. It's inspiring.
I do want to give, I have to give a lot of, it takes a village. And again, I opened up my talk that we're bits and pieces of opportunities, of influences, of, I don't know if I hadn't gone to Mass and Cardinal Burke didn't speak to me. I don't know if I would have gone to Casa Hogar Juan Pablo II. And if that didn't happen, I don't know if Catholic Charities would have hired me. And if that didn't happen, I don't know if Catholic Charities and St. Paul, it's this dominoes effect. And so I feel very honored, but gratitude, because I just, in some ways, happen to be at the right place at the right time as well. And I'm not diminishing my, because I was surprised when I got the job as a trafficking victim services case manager, but I went with it, and that's where it was like, really, are you sure you got the right person here? And but you just, I just went with it. So thank you. I do, employment is one thing, but when you get the opportunity to have time in your schedule for volunteering, that's what I longed for. And because I think that there is just such vast opportunities that are dealing with with injustices in multitude of situations that I really want to learn more about myself. So I do want to add that as a side note.
I think we have time for one more question. What do you hope for the church? Erin, what do you hope for the church?
So I have to say that this parish and responding to it has been so enlightening. I think that, with the ecumenical outreach that we have done, even in the past, Pope John Paul II, and calling for unity and moving forward with that, I think that the robust levels that we're trying to do with this current Pope is what I'm hopeful for, is what I'm excited about. I would like to see the community aspect come back to what used to be maybe, with my grandma Elvina, and stuff, and where people see the church as a nucleus to getting the supports and the encouragement and things that they need. And so I think that this step in bridging communication and the unity that this parish is trying to do, I think is exactly the right direction. I look forward to seeing a lot of our community responding to what we're trying to do.
Well, Erin, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. Our final inside story for the program year in April, we will host the Point Catholic students who have just returned from their mission trip to Kentucky and hear all about that. So please come out to support them and to continue to grow your heart and faith.